which gets back to your question of like, can somebody live 1,000 years? But we have to believe that the next problem is solvable. This is like the issue, I think, of our times for most people. We are still in the cradle. We do have that potential to like grow into the solar system, grow into the galaxy, colonize a million worlds. And I think it's really important to the future of publishing. Create your own favorite thing. Yeah. Don't complain about what doesn't exist. Just start working on it. And the tools of creation are only going to get more and more powerful.
My guest on the podcast today is Eric Jorgenson. He's the author of the Almanack of Naval Ravikant, and he's also the CEO of Scribe Media. Now, the Navalmanack, as it's called, absolutely blew up online shortly after it was published. It's been read, downloaded, bought, shared millions and millions of times. More recently, he came out with the Anthology of Balaji, containing the collected wisdom of Balaji Srinivasan, and it's one of my all-time favorite books. So Eric's here to talk about all of that today, the future of technology, life extension, where he's investing in the future and what that future is going to look like. And he's on the pulse of this stuff, literally at the leading edge. And we talk about all of that in today's episode.
To really start this off in a big way, I want to set this up just by asking you really quick. How old are you?
34.
34. Okay, so we're close in age. I'm 33. So in light of everything that you've been working on with the Anthology of Balaji and your just involvement in tech, we're going to get into all of that. Do you think you're going to live your whole life on Earth?
Yeah, hell yeah, I'm going to live my whole life on Earth. I hope other people are living on Mars or the moon or in space by the time I die. But look, I know that I would not be the first one to cross the Atlantic. I knew that I was not going to be on the Mayflower, on the Christopher Columbus ships. That's not how I work. It's not my predisposition, but I would love to be like watching the reality show of life on Mars. I think that would be so cool. And I think we got a real chance to like live through that moment of life becoming multiplanetary, and I'm rooting for it so hard.
Right on. But you don't want to be, and even if this happens relatively soon, I mean, this is like a big leap, but in the next, in the next 50 years, like you're in your 80s, like, and you're in good health, and they say, hey, do you want to move to Mars? And which is like an insane, like, it's weird how that's not an insane question anymore. Like it's a little bit out there, obviously, admittedly, in light of, everything that we got going on, but it's not impossible. Like it's within the realm of possibility now.
It is definitely, I don't think I would be surprised to find out that I left Earth, but I do think I would be surprised to find out that I lived on Mars. Like, I think if you think Mars is going to be like a cushy, like vacation home situation, like it's certainly not in 50 years. Like it is going to be for like hardworking, able-bodied, like you are going to make many, many sacrifices to be one of the first like million people on Mars. And I don't think 80-year-olds are going to be, chosen or doing it or ready for the voyage or something, most likely. No, I think it's going to be tough. There'll be pioneers, there'll be scientists, there'll be engineers, there'll be people willing to like work hard, make sacrifices. They're going to be heroes in many cases, but I don't think it's going to be a vacation kind of situation. I would love to go up and, if we get a space elevator built or, take one of these things and just have the, there's a term for it. I forget what it's called. The like perspective of seeing all of Earth that astronauts have, that they're like, this was an epiphany unlike any drug could ever give you, to just see the whole of Earth from space and have that perspective. Be like, oh my God, we are all one. Like, how can we spend so much time in these petty squabbles, when there's no border, no countries, no border lines.
Yeah. Exactly. And it's funny that you mentioned that, because like they all say that. There's nobody that goes to space and is like, yeah, that was okay, I guess. Like everyone is like transformed by it.
Yeah.
And
I think it's weird that
like they can do it just seeing a picture of it. Like, and which, I'm sure like it's happened to me. I'm sure it's happened to you. Like, wow, that's insane.
I think it's weird that it doesn't happen more with planes, honestly. Like I have this feelings on planes when you get a window seat, when you sit and look out the window, but now you go on a plane and everyone just like puts the shade down and dials in on, of some Marvel movie, instead of being like, can we appreciate the fucking miracle that's happening right now? Like a guy just took a shit traveling like 600 miles an hour, miles above the earth. And he's like complaining about the Wi-Fi not working. Wow. And we're 50 years into flight, maybe no more, like 100 years into flight.
Yeah.
And we have like millions of man hours of flight happening constantly. It is an absolute miracle that we completely take for granted. But not yet for space. So hopefully that preserves for a while.
It's funny. Louis C.K. The comedian has a great bit about planes, and he's like just making fun of people who complain like they're like, man, they made us wait, like on the tarmac for 40 minutes, and he's like, oh yeah, that sounds terrible. Then what happened? Did you fly through the air like a bird? Like you're sitting on a chair flying through the sky, like 40 minutes.
We're the only generation to ever see the top of those clouds, and it is it's such a like my miracle was 40 minutes late, and that's so true of so many like incredible technologies that we have.
There's a really interesting book, and I'm not sure how high up this would be on your reading list priorities, but it was the autobiography of Amelia Earhart, and it's called The Fun of It, and it's a super short book, and like it's really really interesting, and like one thing that jumped out was like how supportive her parents were. And in like the early 1900s, and just how like they made sure that she was a reader, and she had a big education. Like there were always books in the house, and she'd tell her parents that she wants to fly airplanes in like the early 1900s, and and her dad, I forget the exact words, but like I mean, I guess you'll have to learn. It's like, I guess we'll set this up. And in the book, she's talking about like the first few like transatlantic flights, and she had like I think this was her first flight across the Atlantic. She had like a map pinned to like her dress or whatever, and it was just open to the elements, and she was like worried about that her map was going to fly away. And like this is like, and this wasn't that long ago, right? So
no, I think I recently read a similar thing about like Chuck Yeager and breaking the sound, but like his notes and his like talking through as he flew through the sound barrier for the first time, and just like it was like the nuclear. We don't know what's going to happen. Like there's no predictive theory of physics of like maybe this whole plane will just shatter and there's an invisible barrier and I'm about to die, but like let me floor it and see. What a fucking hero! Amazing.
Yeah. That's wild. Now, some people believe that, and I can't pinpoint any names. I feel like Ray Kurzweil believes this. Probably a bunch of others. That sort of whole group, they think that the first human being to live to 1,000 has already been born. Like somebody like very young could probably like potentially live to 1,000 right now. Do you think that's possible, or cautiously optimistic? Like, what are your first reactions to that?
I'm dubious, but optimistic, but scared, but contemplative. Those are my series of things. 1,000's a long time. I mean, that feels like a lot of breakthroughs. And you have to prevent a lot of different things from happening in order for somebody to live that long. But the nature of these like sort of exponential technology advances is that like it's very easy. I remember, I think, 20 years ago or something, people were predicting like, oh, the first person to live to 150 has already been born. And the thing is like, we don't know if that's true or not yet. Like maybe like Brian Johnson or whatever, whoever's like at the forefront of this will live to 150. And if that is true, if we knew that for an absolute fact now, then it makes it more likely that you're like, oh, okay, like if the exponential curve is taking off and somebody's going to make it to 150 has already been born, and that tracks actually linearly, which there's a bunch of reasons why it may or may not, but like, 50 years younger than Brian Johnson and the compounding rate of progress, like maybe. Like I see how you could chart it out and get there, but man, we are so complex that it's a really difficult problem. And then of course all the like regulatory issues about them actually rolling it out and finding somebody who has all the sort of natural gifts to then bestow the science upon them to get them to that point, and the ethics of it are confusing. And then of course there's the whole thing where like we're not yet very good at changing our minds, and as we age we get worse at changing our minds. So like maybe we should figure out how to change our minds before we figure out how to live forever. Like we're already not doing so great with like 80-year-old presidents. Like do we want 900-year-old presidents? I don't know. Like what happens here?
Yeah, I mean, it's not just about like the hard number of years. It's health span, not just lifespan, and and like another thought that kind of struck me was that like if you live to 1,000, like accidents are already tragic, right? I mean, if you expect to live to 80 and you die at 20, that's a tragedy, right? But if you expect to live to 200 and you live and you die at 20, like that's even more tragic somehow. Like it's just. It's like you have so much more life ahead of you, like that will never be lived, and it's like there's a whole lot of some thinking to do with respect to all that.
Yeah. Now I wonder how wise we can get with a few lifetimes. Like the people who who do truly compound, their whole lives and get smarter and better and are able to continue to change their minds. I think that's a really interesting question. Like, is that second 100 years better than the first 100 years? And if so, how much? Or is it not at all? Like, if you were playing humanity in a video game, like, does unlocking another 100-year lifespan actually like improve the rate of progress of all these other things, or does it slow it, or does it have no impact? I don't know, and I can imagine a lot of variables acting in different directions.
Mm-hmm. Now, you've written two. Okay, so I'll have more to say about video games later on. No, you've written two books about people who are two different people who are quite good at changing their mind and sort of seeing around corners. And we're gonna talk about that quite in depth. One of them, so for one book, I don't even know how many pages of notes that I took. And I'm speaking, of course, about the Almanack of Naval Ravikant. And yeah, that one. Hey, I remember that. Except I do not have a physical copy. I should get one. I read it on my phone. I remember where I was when I first read it, and it would be the same with the anthology. Like, it was one of those transformative books. Like, you remember exactly where you were. Like Fahrenheit 451 was like that for me, and a few books like that. So yeah, they're quite good at changing their minds. Now, I don't know how many pages of notes I have on the anthology. Dozens. It's
awesome.
almost like it's to the point where it's like I'm glad it's free. So because I was like copying out like most of it, and it's like, well, there's got to be some sort of copyright issue for me, like just writing out all these notes. Balaji might be one of like the most quotable people of like this book might be the most quotable book of all time, which is pretty wild.
That's a mission I go on, actually, like a KPI for me, for lack of a better term, or like a metric that I think about actively as I build these books is highlight density. Like, I want people to have a highlight on every single page of that book and constantly feel like they're like, oh my God, oh, this is so good. Oh, I can't wait to see, like, what's the next one going to be? Just make it really, really like rich and nutritious of a reading experience.
Yeah. Hey, it worked on me. I mean, like, you're 2 for 2. Like, and actually, I read your like, you have a very short book that you I think was your first one, career advice for uniquely ambitious people.
Yeah.
And,
that was just that was basically a long email that I kept having that like same 1 hour conversation with people on the phone who were like, hey, like, I'm an ambitious young person. Like, what do I need to know? I want to pick your brain. And so I was like, all right, I finally just was like, all right, I'm sick of having this 1 hour conversation. Like, here's the same thing. I'm just going to brain dump it all. I'm going to put it on Amazon. It's a little bit of a like one weekend project. But it's so, I think people have found it helpful. I should probably go revisit and see if I still believe everything in there, if there's some updates to make.
Did I hear something about you working on a third book, something about Elon?
I'm working on Elon. Yeah, I'm actually like cruising through it. It's so energizing to work on. I would love, it is an unofficial project at the moment. I'd love to reach him and just get a thumbs up on it. But like, I'm psyched about it, and I'm finding it so fulfilling. And he's got such, I mean, you could debate different actions of his all day, but I think he's the greatest living entrepreneur. Like, who else has put up so many enormous companies that are so transformative? And he's an extreme person, like high highs, low lows, spiky, unpredictable. The Walter Isaacson biography on it is fantastic and like sheds a lot of the light on the background behind it. But I think, my motivation when I build these books is not let me evaluate this person. It's not let me put them into historical context. It's not even let me provide all the details about them. My like overarching function is to find their most useful ideas and make them accessible, well organized, and useful to the reader. So I sort of omit the downsides or the risks or the controversial pieces, and I just say, like, if you got to sit across from them, you got to ask them every question you wanted, they got to give their best, most honest answer, that they have the best advice that they've ever given over the course of their whole lives, and they're giving it to you personally, directly. That's the feeling that I want to create, because I think we have so much to learn from everybody, really, but from especially these people that I've selected. I've learned a lot from them, and just want to capture and share those lessons with as many people as I can, because I think they are useful for the individual, but also good for society. And I think that's an important thing to get both of.
Yeah. No, I think so too. And it's like all three of these people have such a wildly different, way of thinking, like mode of consciousness than like most people. And, like not saying it's better or worse. I mean, I'm sure there are happier people. Like if we're talking about happier, I don't think like Elon's like particularly happy, maybe fulfilled, maybe like, like he's got a lot going on. But just the way of thinking, like there's nobody else that's thinking in this way. And I haven't read the Isaacson biography yet, but I've read the Ashley Vance biography in 2015 or something like that. And he basically moved, like one company was failing. I think it was Tesla or something. And they took everything from, he took everything from Tesla and put it right back into SpaceX. And he basically like bankrupted himself almost. Like he was down to zero at one of these companies, moved millions from one of his other companies, saved it, built them both back up, and then added all these projects like Mars and stuff like that. And like he has controversial opinions, like, and I want to get your kind of thoughts on this, on why he's so hated by people. Like I don't know, like I don't want to be like super like negative or anything, but there are people who have like really strong, like visceral, like negative reactions to him and what he says and what he's about. And I want to like know what you think is behind that. Is it just like envy, or is it just like ideological, or like what's going on there?
Yeah, there's maybe different answers to that for different people, certainly, and for different eras of Elon. I think it's a very underrated thing, as you point out, how many risks he's taken and how extreme those risks were. Mm-hmm. Not only, like, I think maybe most well known is the story of like, Tesla and SpaceX were both in dire straits at the exact same time. He only had a little bit of money left. I mean, a little, still tens of millions, but like only enough to really only obviously save one or the other. And like, he couldn't let either one die. So he split the money, like gave them both just enough to maybe make it over the next hurdle. And he was CEO of both companies at the time, I believe, and they both survived. And he's like, they were just on the ragged edge of bankruptcy, each of them for years for different reasons in parallel. But he did the same thing earlier in his career. Like he took the winnings. Zip2 was his first company, which most people forget about. Mm-hmm. He was young, I think teens when he started that, or early 20s at least. Built that up, sold it immediately, still in the middle of the internet. Like that was retirement money. Like this is circa 2000 or late 90s, like double digit millions. And immediately like he bought a McLaren, rented an apartment, and put the rest back into starting X, which became PayPal. Immediately started another company, put a ton of his own money in it, funded the whole thing. Immediately after the PayPal sale, took the 100+ million and rolled that back into SpaceX and Tesla, and over again has just put his whole life savings plus on the table, which is an extremely, like, it's an insane thing to do. You only do it if you're wired for that kind of insane risk taking, and frankly, if you put the outcome ahead of your own personal wealth, right? Like a number of times he had like retire with fuck you money potential and just didn't, and just kept working is admirable. I mean, I think it's easy to, his opinions or his visions, I suppose, are like so extreme that it's easy to disagree with them. I think there's a lot of misunderstandings. I think there's a lot of deliberate misunderstanding. If you're an environmentalist and you see somebody trying to build a colony on Mars, they're kind of like, yeah, but shouldn't you be saving Earth? It's like, yes. Can I direct you to the like electric car company that's done more prevent like greenhouse gas emissions than like maybe any other company?
And not only that, but just like the offshoot technologies that come from that, even like going to the moon in the 1969, like the things that resulted from that, it's like like you're not wasting money just going to space. You're building all this other like technology that's going to make things better here, just in the process, right? It goes back into it, and I don't think people understand that.
There's so many. And there's many things that you disagree with about like, politics or how he handled Twitter or whatever. But I think, there are many, many, many objectively great things that he's done, that he's advancing. You don't have to agree with the goals to respect the accomplishment of what he's done. Yeah. But it is really, I think he's done an incredible amount of good. And certainly, like, even if you don't agree with what he's done or why he's done it, you can learn something from how he's done it and apply it to your own goals, your own missions, which is, again, the sort of the mission that I serve in creating these books.
Yeah, no, for sure. And and like it's a lot of like he put on, like, he took on so much risk himself, and like you get rewarded for that, in everything. And people like one of the criticisms that people like sort of put up against billionaires specifically, or like business people in general, like CEOs, right? Like how are you like compensated so much more for like than like frontline workers? But for two major reasons that I see. Like, one, your decisions carry more consequence. Like if you're frontline, obviously nothing against manufacturer. Like if you work in an auto plant, if you mess up your day's work, like it's maybe a few $1,000s worth of damage, right? But if you make a bad decision as a CEO, you lose like millions of customer of company value, right? So like that's a major thing, right? And so you're going to get compensated more for that, and just in the risk itself, like it's like you could you're putting up everything, like you're and not just like Elon, but basically everyone who's started a company of their own, and like you have to you put up so much of your own stuff, and way more than just being an employee of someone else. Like there's no risk involved in that, and yeah.
Yeah, there's a good passage in the Elon book that I remember that's just like, it's like, I think there are meetings, like half-hour meetings, in which I've made a decision to bet hundreds of millions of dollars on a thing where the outcome is tens of millions. Like, how do you fairly compensate someone for their judgment in that kind of situation?
Yeah.
It is really staggering how that stuff can accrue. And Naval does a good job of explaining it in his book, actually. Like, if you want to accrue wealth, build or buy equity in a business. Like, equity is the path to ownership, and the reason, or the path to wealth. And the reason is because it is the high upside, high downside position in sort of the world of capital allocation, or in a capital stack. If you want guaranteed money, you're going to get lower returns. If you want to take the high upside, you're going to take the risk of getting a zero. And I don't know of anybody off the top of my head who's put more money in an equity position more times than Elon on a high upside, high downside position. So of course, it's we could have done this 99 more times, and he could have made all the same moves, and it might have not worked the other 99 times, and he might have gone bust, and we might not have a SpaceX or a Tesla. But we live in the reality, or the universe of the multiverses where it worked out. And if you deliver multiple civilization changing technologies to our species, like, do you not deserve to be one of the richer people alive? What are we arguing with? Let alone the straw man of kind of like people who are mad at billionaires tend to really not understand it, at least the shallow arguments that I've seen tend to really not understand sort of the mechanics or the value of the capitalist sort of society that we live in. They'll kind of like decry billionaires, and then at the same time go like non-ironically watch the royal family and love a monarchy. And you're like, whoa, this person like contributed something. These people just tax the hell out of everybody and like wear jewels and are miserable about it the whole time. Like, what are you? Let's think critically about this. Like,
yeah. I mean, it's almost like like you're complaining about waiting for 40 minutes on the tarmac, and then it's the exact same thing. Then what happened? Did you have did you go to space?
Someone offered you a miracle for $400, and now you're angry at the person who you paid the money to for the thing for having the money that you paid them. Like, what?
Just pay for the blue check and move on.
Oh God!
But well,
can't fix all these brains. We could try one podcast at a time.
Yeah. Well, and like, there's so many things that sort of what you said brought up for me. One of them is actually Balaji's one-liner for the future is basically more upside, more downside, and we'll get back into him because he's another just fascinating figure. But there's so much I have pages and pages of notes from this book, and like each one is like a jumping off point for like a big conversation. But I just back on the wealth side, I was reading a book a little bit ago. It's called the 10 Pillars of Wealth by Alex Becker. He's a software engineer. I think he sold his company for like 9 figures recently. So he's like pretty like decently successful dude. He had an awesome YouTube channel.
That's decent.
Oh, man. Right? Yeah, decent. It's okay. He's a fantastic YouTube channel. He's just kind of hilarious and just awesome. But he like one of the things he says in the book, like it's very, very hard to spend $5 million, and you know, and like even $5 million is a lot. But like it's not like I think people overestimate how much money they actually need, and they're sort of unhappy for no reason. And I did the math myself. And Alex Hormozy, he's another business guy that I follow quite often, and he sort of laid it all out. And he basically said, like, if you want like the absolute best of everything, and like, which I like personally, I don't even like, I don't have that many desires, but he said, like, let's say you wanted like the absolute best of everything. You know, you have like a $300,000 car, you know, and like, you know, say you're paying, you know, $7,000 a month in rent, and you spend $1,000 a week on restaurants, and maybe you take, you know, and like all that stuff, like that's like like less than $1 million right there. You know, and it's like the absolute best of everything. And like, you're telling me that you can't be happy on less than that. And like, that's not even 5 million. Like that's, and for Elon to sort of, he had that huge payday. What was it, like 10 million or something? And that's retirement money, like you said. But no, he had a bigger purpose. And I kind of, this is a question I just thought of. And it relates to one of the best books that I've read in recent memory. And I wonder if you've read it too. It's called The Hypomanic Edge by John Gardner. Have you heard of this? It is phenomenal. And it's basically it's a selection of case studies, right, about some of the bigger not founding fathers necessarily, but Hamilton is featured in the book, and Christopher Columbus, and a few of the early pilgrims and everything. And it's his thesis is that they had or sort of suffered, quote unquote, from hypomania, which is like a little bit less than like full on mania, but it's basically characterized by, you know, massive like levels of drive and enthusiasm and ambition, and it was mostly his idea is that it was mostly these immigrants that had this sort of hypomanic genes, and they'd all show up in this sort of hypomanic experiment that was America, and they built this thing, just ambition. And there's a great section on like the Hollywood movie moguls, like the Myers and everything, and just like and he's like in one on Craig Venter as well, and just like he doesn't have sort of like hard data that these are all hypomanics, but he sort of makes a compelling case that they might have been. And I wonder if Elon is one of those people, if he has like a touch of the hypomania that sort of drives him, right?
Yeah, I think that's I think that is not a stretch.
No, right?
Yeah. I hope that America is still the light, the house on the hill for the hypomanic ambition, because I think that's what made us what we are today.
Yeah, I mean that's Gardner's thesis in the book. One of the funniest quotes was from Craig Venter, and he's just like sequencing the human genome, right? Like another like massive project. And one of the reporter asked him what role that God plays in this, and he was like, "Well, he certainly helped." Just like, man, just like how do you say that?
I mean, like that is a good. It's a good filter. Like those people, you know, I think Elon lays the math out in the book of just like, you know, if you work 100 hours and somebody else is working 50, like you're going to lap them in a year, and the compounding results of that return is going to continue. You know, it's a pretty safe, you know, I do some early stage venture investing. Like, you know, my one liner for our thesis is like funding obsessive geniuses building utopian technologies. And when you find somebody that's just like on the edge of their seat and cannot stop talking or thinking about this thing, and like can't imagine doing anything else, and kind of the rest of their life is a shambles because like this is all they care about and all they focus on, like that's actually a good sign, like that for them reaching the outcome that they want to achieve, because they're just obsessed with it, and their productive output or their likelihood to be creative coming out of it, to have some sort of breakthrough, or to just put in more work, or that extra 10 or 20 or 50 or 100% of persistence that it takes to make that next breakthrough, is there. I mean, you know, you can't be a rational person and do what Elon did. You can't.
Yeah. And many of them in garages that we've never heard of. So, I mean, like, so you would have like an ear to the ground on this stuff. Like who's like, give me a sense of like the crazy things that people are working on that most people have never heard of, like these geniuses that are in their garages that are working on the next big thing that you hope they make it. Like what's most exciting?
Oh, there's a bunch in a bunch of different directions. I'll be like slightly vague because I think not all of these are supposed to be public yet, but there's one person that we are working with who has a lead on developing a new battery chemistry, like a lithium ion battery that would massively increase the energy density of today's batteries. So your phone would last for a week. Your Tesla on a charge could drive across the country. Suddenly electric vertical takeoff and landing jets become like a no-brainer. Energy grid storage changes entirely because it becomes much cheaper to store renewables or nuclear baseload power and shift it around. So, and energy becomes much, much cheaper, which means we can power computers much more cheaply, which means it accelerates AI. There's all kinds of desalinization becomes a thing. Like we've invested in quite a few different nuclear different approaches to sort of moving nuclear forward and building more new kinds of reactors. And it's a really big focus for us to produce more energy, produce it more cheaply, produce it in more form factors, because that is really like the basic cost of everything. And humanity's energy production and usage is actually plateaued, like on a per capita basis. There's an amazing book called "Where's My Flying Car" from Stripe Press. I was
going to ask you about that.
Yeah, I love that book. It was a big red pill for me, like down this rabbit hole. And it's a brilliant author. I've interviewed him. I've done a podcast episode with my book notes on it. My podcast is called Smart Friends. It's inspiring to see what each of these technological breakthroughs can create. And getting back to our sort of longevity thing, one that we invested in, and I have a podcast with him out soon, is the founder of Atom Limbs, which is like a non-invasive but mind-controlled robotic prosthetics. So for many, many people are limbless or handless, legless, and this company is like a bunch of former Apple, former IDEO people who are developing these really, really incredible, well-crafted, intuitive, like limbs, robotic limbs that are as good as, and so as our bodies degrade, like, which gets back to your question of like, can somebody live 1,000 years? It's like, I don't know, if we can preserve like a brain and a head and maybe a torso, but maybe just a brain and a head, and we can replace it with like very intuitive, natural sort of robotic limbs, like it's a little Futurama, but like, does that count? It's the same, it's a linear persona through the mind. These are interesting questions. But I just find I get so much hope and so much excitement out of sort of existing at that frontier and learning about what the new things are coming and what these different entrepreneurs are working on. And I think it's so important to support these new technologies, support them with capital, support them with policies, support them with like as customers. Self-driving cars is a great example, right? That we've got like 10 years ago when this technology came out, we were like, oh my God, like this is a miracle. So many people die in car accidents. We spend so many hours behind the wheel. Like it would be so incredible to have robots that could drive in autonomous cars. And now we have it. Like it's true. It's real. It's in multiple cities. Like you go to San Francisco, you can see videos of it on Twitter. There's people doing Waymo and Cruise in a number of cities, and they're rolling out more and more. But there's also people protesting it and holding it back and stop. And I was like, oh my God, like if you have one friend or family member who died in a car accident or got killed by a drunk driver or something like that, like how can you conscionably protest like or slow down in any way, do anything other than throw your full economic and political weight behind the rollout of this new technology that's going to save so many tragedies from occurring? So that's a good, very practical example. I think that's like the one of the crux issues of our age. Self-driving cars is an absolute miracle, and I hope more and more people kind of get access to it soon. Yeah,
no, me too. And like there's so many things that are happening now that are just like it's a wonderful time to be alive. I want to sort of skip ahead, 100 years, obviously, or 200 or 500. I do still want to be around, and I want to ask you a little bit more about that. But yeah, I think we just, and Balaji says this a lot too. We just have to devote more attention to how good things actually are, and it's so easy. just how people are wired, how, and, the incentives of others to sort of keep people sort of, in the sort of negativity space, right?
Yeah.
It's so important to just sort of keep your eyes on the good. I always use the analogy of race car drivers. And so like when I've never driven, I mean, I've driven my own car really fast, but I've never, I'm not a race car driver. But when they're about to hit a wall, and again, I've never done that, but when they're about to hit the wall, they don't look at the wall thinking, oh, I gotta steer away from this wall that I'm going to hit. They look away from the wall towards where they want to go. And I think that's such a great analogy for just, for how you sort of, make anything better. You don't stare at the problem. Acknowledge that there's a wall there. Like there are, these are big, challenges. They exist. These are pressing, urgent questions. There are horrible, awful things happening. However, that is the wall. It's there.
Yeah.
Don't focus on that. Focus on the solution. And, I think that's one of the common themes of everyone that you've profiled in your books, and, and a common theme of your work, as an investor, author, and everything. Just you're looking away from the wall, which I think is fantastic. I think it's one of the keys.
Yeah, I'm happier when I do it, and I hope other people are happier when they're experiencing it. And I hope that that optimism spreads. I think rational optimism is a very reasonable way to sort of go about your life and go about growing this civilization, this species. Like this is
now, how can the average person, or like anybody, how can they learn how to be more optimistic? Like, is that a skill that you develop? Like, how does somebody sort of move themselves? It's sort of, I mean, I know there's a baseline at like a set point of happiness, of course. But like, if you're trying to be more optimistic, like how does a person do that?
I think there's, just like anything else, there's kind of two ways. There's adding the positive and there's removing the negative. So I think, to add the positive, you just spend more time on some media or with people who are optimistic, who are focused on kind of positive visions of the future. We meaning like the collective of people who sort of think like me and believe in a utopian future, are trying to create more fiction and more nonfiction that supports, that optimistic future. But at the same time, like just removing the negatives, like if you start to add a filter for evaluating, like, is this an optimistic or pessimistic take that I'm consuming right now? And if you're, as you're reading a news article or watching local news or listening to a podcast, like cynicism is so mentally cheap. Like it is so easy to come up with why something won't work or why someone is wrong. It is, we're biologically programmed to be pessimistic. The optimist got eaten for the most part through all of human history. So, acknowledging that that's the default state. And if you don't expend a little effort to look on the bright side or to think of a positive outcome, and get yourself into a place, where the positive outcomes benefit you more than a negative outcome hurts you. I think there's different games that train you to think in different ways. And I'm both fortunate and I think a little deliberate in choosing the games that I play in life, working in startups, building businesses, taking equity positions, writing about people that I admire, that I respect, that I want to grow. I want to grow awareness of their best ideas. You're not going to catch me writing like takedown pieces or blog posts. Like, it's not like I don't have negative thoughts. It's not that I don't, think critically of people and find some people that I don't want to amplify their messages. I'm just very deliberate to only share the positive things, to only, write books about the not just the people who I think are positive, but the positive ideas of those people that I think are useful and constructive. And I think we all kind of can take up a little bit of that in the future. And so when you hear somebody, complaining about, like I was doing another podcast and talking to somebody and they were like, yeah, I've really, like, the dinner table conversation in my life has changed around nuclear power. And I've tried very deliberately to do it. We've got a whole generation that was sort of raised with a vague assumption that nuclear power is really dangerous and shouldn't be continued. And, oh my God, a plant in my backyard can be super dangerous and the nuclear waste is a huge problem. And, if you actually go look at all the facts, like, we created a miracle. It'd be like if we invented flying and then never commercialized flight. It was only available in like some unique military technologies or something like that. Like, most of the U.S. Navy is powered by nuclear, and we've had 0 naval nuclear disasters. Fukushima was more of a natural disaster than a nuclear disaster. Like you can, this is again, a lot of this is from the book Where's My Flying Car, which I cannot recommend highly enough. And I, have just done more research about this thing, but like, the tide is shifting a little bit about that, and having optimism about the fact that like, no, we can build nuclear power plants. We can build them much cheaper than we're building them. They can be these like 100-year sources of extremely cheap electricity. There's so many, and that now let's talk about all the things that happen if we get cheap electricity. And then like, what opportunities does that unlock? Like that is a so much more fun and energizing branch of conversation to me than, cheaply sort of taking chip shots without feeling and being deeply informed about the challenges of things. And you see this conversation happening like all the time. And the pattern that I see play out, that I think Balaji describes it well, like eventually the pessimists are always wrong, like, and the optimists win. And there's something about, it's a fundamental sort of tenet of a technologist and an optimist to believe that the next problem is solvable, right? So there's always the but like, oh yeah, we can't develop airplanes, like they could crash. It's like, yeah, but look at how all the things that we have invented to prevent crash. It is an incredible system that we have of commercial air flight, and how few people ever are harmed. We can have the same discipline in nuclear. We can have the same discipline in all these other sort of technological opportunities, but we have to believe that the next problem is solvable. Like, yeah, there'll be some nuclear waste, but now we have figured out how to have a order of magnitude or two less waste than we've ever had. We've also figured out how to store it safely. We've also figured out how to do, nuclear waste with nuclear power generation with no waste. It's a really, really, it's an important thing to not just be optimistic, but extend that optimism, like round after round after round, and invest in the things that are going to manifest that, whether it's more education, more engineers, supporting these initiatives.
Yeah, I mean, it's so, I think it's so imperative to sort of keep the good in front of you, because it's so easy to forget that it exists, right? Especially when, there are people with like, not like, I'm gonna say the news. I don't mean all news. I mean, you mentioned before in another podcast, like journalists used to be, these, like, everyone, they sort of like looked upon as a group as being like these, crusaders for like, for justice or whatever, like just like for truth and everything. And now it's like, you can't really tell now. Like, it's kind of like, there was another author that he's been on the podcast before, MJ DeMarco, and he basically listed all the Super Bowl ads on the commercial, Super Bowl ads that played during the game, and like half of them were, for like horribly unhealthy foods that will kill you, and then the other half were for medications, that will, reverse the damage that the snack foods gave you. Yeah. And we've talked before about negativity bias, like how it's literally like more more salient human beings brain, like people pay more attention to something that's negative, and like that's basically how you do it, like how you hook attention. You basically show people like the absolute worst of everything, like misery and awfulness, and then you hook their attention so you can sell them like Crest toothpaste or some shit, and it's the incentives for making people more negative, and like the things that get shared online are sort of like high arousal emotions, which like anger, right? And it's just like,
yeah, it's a very pernicious thing. And again, remembering, back to the, like, how do you get more optimistic? Like, recognize when something is trying to make you pessimistic, and the algorithms that are trying to just like keep you spending more minutes in Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, they don't have an incentive to increase your mental health. They have an incentive to keep you looking at that screen for, every incremental minute that they can. And yeah, to your point, exactly. Like, a lot of the ways that they do that is with negative things, or things that make you feel bad, or make you scared. And those are very like interchangeable. Yeah. I think the point that you made on the, like, the food and pharma, like, feedback loop is terrifying and very real. A great guest, Callie Means, would be an amazing, they're siblings, and they co-wrote this book called Good Energy together. They're like the most switched on people in health. The book just came out called Good Energy. It's amazing. Like, this is like the issue, I think, of our times for most people. it's just this like pernicious hidden tax on all of our energies and livelihoods and health. And, you know, back to health span is like, yeah, we have the potential to increase to live to 1,000. But actually, if you look at the data, like our lifespans are going down for the first time in like hundreds of years, despite all the technological development, despite all the improvements in health, despite all of the like wealth that's being created as a society that is creating the social safety net. Like our lives are ending sooner and we are less healthy throughout them. Seems like an important fucking thing to go and figure out. And it's not a huge secret what it might be. You know, the food, the pharma, the processed stuff, the cheap dopamine, the sugar, like it's really, it's a very important thing. And just like the algorithms, it's very hard to like just manifest the will to do the right thing. Even if you know what the right thing is, you're just surrounded by all these things that are like weighing on you, and trying to like pull you into being a worse version of yourself. And yeah, man, it's the wise really, you really have to invest in controlling your environment in order to control that outcome without relying on, you know, constantly winning that battle of wills.
Yeah. And I think one of the worst things that happens is that you forget how good it's possible to feel, because then this sort of, you know, this reduced state of humanity basically is how you kind of live your days, and you kind of like, that becomes your new normal.
It's like Big Brother. Like, yeah.
Just, right. Yeah. Yeah, it's just wild. This reminds me of something that Morgan Housel said in The Psychology of Money. He says that optimism sounds like a sales pitch, and pessimism sounds like somebody trying to help you.
Yeah,
and, you know, it's so true.
Yeah.
Now, I want to mention another
I would like to emphasize the opposite. I think optimism is someone trying to help you, and pessimism is a sales pitch. Pessimism is someone trying to sound smart, and optimism is someone trying to help you.
Fair enough. Yeah. Interesting. Now, I want to ask you about Scribe Media. You're the company that you basically took over as CEO. Super exciting news. I don't want to ask you yet, though. I want to. There's a couple other things. There's a book that I wouldn't be surprised if you hadn't read it, because like you're a busy guy. But I'd be very surprised if you hadn't heard of it. And if you haven't, man, just run out and get it. And like, I don't say that lightly. It's called What We Owe the Future by William McCaskill.
I love the title. Man. I haven't read it. I'll buy it on this podcast.
It is absolutely phenomenal. And I probably have more notes from that book than I do from the anthology, which is saying something, because I was just like, quote, like writing something from every single page. And it's about long-termism, basically, which is his view. And basically our obligations or responsibilities towards, you know, future humans that don't exist. And one of like the most striking things about that book, which and he says this in the introduction. He mentions that the average lifespan of like a mammalian species is about 1 million years. Right. And so if like humans have been 200,000 years, like give or take, whatever, that we've been sort of like the way we are now. So if like 200,000 compared to like 1 million, like that's like there's so much more future ahead of us, like than there is past behind us. But then where it kind of gets really crazy, like say, you know, humanity doesn't destroy itself, which is kind of what the book is about. Like it's about the challenges facing us, and, you know, the different probabilities of things happening or not happening, and how we can sort of avert those disasters, you know. But say we make it through everything, we ace the Drake equation, and we're like that one, then like we exist, right, against all odds, and, you know, humanity survives for the next, you know, 100 million trillion years. Like that's like the entire history of humanity up until this point is like the first few minutes or seconds of life, if you were to think of it in terms of like a single human being's life. And like there's so much, like the future is big, basically, like his thing, and it's big, but it's not guaranteed. You know, like there are like legitimate, like very real, serious dangers that like it's not. You know, like we're still kind of, you know, at the climax of the movie almost. Like this is the point at which, you know, like everything, like the entire future rides on what we do right now, you know, today. And the whole book is about that. It's absolutely phenomenal. I loved it. And he's really just a brilliant dude. And actually I would watch an episode of Smart Friends if you had him on. Like that would be man,
I would love that. You give me chills talking about that. I love that feeling of zooming out and seeing our place. it's a little scary and humbling to be like, oh yeah, I'm only going to live like 100 years of the million years of our, species trajectory. Right. But imagining like, we look back at the past, we're so grateful that we didn't have to live in, the brutal like hunting gathering, just try to survive through winter long enough to procreate, like kind of days of humanity. But man, look how much we have to go. Like we are still in the cradle. We do have that potential to like grow into the solar system, grow into the galaxy, colonize a million worlds. And I think it's a very interesting, there's some people that are like grossed out by that. They're like, oh yeah, so we're going to like destroy other planets. And I'm like, no, like what would be happening on this planet if humans didn't exist? Like creatures would be dying, living, dying, killing each other, eating each other. Like nature is brutal. So far as I know, like we're the only ones here to observe the beauty of a sunrise or to like appreciate the magic of consciousness and be able to develop ways to continue to improve it, like to show that compassion and like do more things. Like more humans are better. Like human growth and expansion is a good thing. We can become better versions of ourselves and we should aspire to, but let's not be like self-loathing as a species, there's so much exciting stuff ahead. And I mean, just the concept of thinking about what do we owe the future? Like, I think it's a lot. I think it's our best work. I think it's investing in things that, I'm real fucking grateful that we have, sourdough bread and air conditioning, roofs,
that's the first thing you thought.
hot tubs. Let's go with it. Like, there's a lot of amazing things that we experience day to day that bring us joy that the past gave us. And, we absolutely do owe it to future generations to continue to build on their progress.
Well, William McCaskill, the author of that book, he said, positively influencing the future is the key moral priority of our time, which, I would agree with. I don't think there's a whole lot of debate around that. I mean, there is. Strange, inexplicably there is, but I don't think there should be. One of my favorite books.
You so rarely hear people actually frame a debate about a policy or a government or a technology with that idea, though, and I think that's such a well phrased idea.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, he's placing the same value on future human beings that don't exist yet as current ones that live in. And like the closer you can sort of get to that, and like it's hard for people, even sort of like a future version of yourself. And like I found that extremely helpful in my own sort of personal development to sort of like pull myself towards this future version of myself that I want to create. But it's difficult. Like you lose the thread very easily. You get sort of submerged in the minutia of like daily living, right? And you forget like how great you can become, like, and the things that you can achieve. Like you sort of underestimate like how like what you can achieve if you're on fire for the next like 10 years. Like that's like you could do like an insane amount. And like one of my favorite books of all time is Cosmos by Carl Sagan. And phenomenal. And he basically, in that book, he's like, what the consciousness is, or the universe is basically, or human beings is, the universe gaining consciousness and experiencing itself, right? Which is literally what it is. Like it's, atom, like the stuff from the stars coalescing, like coming together, like witnessing, and then like observing itself, and like that's like a miracle that like everyone on Earth is living that miracle right at this very moment, and it's like very few people get to sort of appreciate that as often as they should, right?
Yeah, I think the way Elon put this is like if you leave a bunch of hydrogen gas out for long enough, it starts talking to itself.
That's very Elon.
Yeah.
Oh man, I like it. Yeah, I definitely like highly recommend that book. And actually, this before we started, I mentioned this crazy fact that I was going to bring up, and now's a good time, I guess. Since the last time we talked on a podcast, I've read more than 400 books.
Damn.
Pretty insane. Like, which is like a few years ago.
Well over 100 a year. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, I number them. I mean, not everyone has to. It's a total vanity metric. Like, it doesn't mean anything, but I find it personally motivating to track,
Yeah.
the books that I read. So I looked at my list, and the Almanack of Naval Ravikant is like 800 and something. There's a few of them since then. What We Are the Future, Life Force, one of Tony Robbins' new books, just about all these like crazy futuristic medical advances that are like here yesterday or are coming in the next like 6 months to like a couple years.
Yeah.
And just like, man, it's just wild.
I love it. Very optimistic.
But,
yeah. I love an optimistic reading list.
Yeah. Oh man,
sure.
It's great.
Yeah.
There's a whole bunch of really cool ones. Life Force is good. Yeah, there's a bunch. No, you recently became CEO of a publishing company, Scribe.
Yeah.
That's pretty wild. I mean, did you kind of see this happening? Like in any sort of future version of you? Did you was this on your bingo card for
No,
2024?
not even close, dude. I cannot overstate my level of surprise. Like it is funny. It's a classic kind of like you understand how the dots connect in reverse, but had zero plan or intention of this. And it's a crazy story how it happened, actually. And I think it's a really, like, you think of CEOs as like, okay, they either started the company or they worked their way up into this big company over the course of their entire career. And like the culmination of that is becoming CEO. And I sort of like fell backwards through a side door, which I think is just like a very interesting story about how the world works. I think like zooming out a little, I became a customer of Scribe's also somewhat by accident. Like I had read Tucker Max's blog. Tucker had started reading my blog as he was like starting Scribe. It's about a 10-year-old company now. And it was founded by Tucker Max and Zach O'Brunt. And they had this observation that like entrepreneurs needed help sort of writing and publishing their books. And there's a bunch of incredible authors with amazing insights that traditional publishers, for whatever reason, like don't care about or won't invest in, or like just give up on, like put a stone wall on them. And those people need a path to publish their book. And they did a great work. I mean, Tucker's an incredible writer and Zach's a great operator.
Yeah.
They built this company up
generally.
Both great, great people. And so as I was always working on the Almanack of Naval and like sharing and tweeting about it, Tucker was like, let me see if I can help. Like, let's get on a call. Like, give you the lay of the land of the publishing industry and show you the trade-offs. And I was like, okay, cool. Appreciate you very much. And we got on, and he sort of laid this all out for me, and I became a customer of Scribe and had a great experience publishing with them. I mean, writing this book was incredible, but publishing it and seeing everything that it did, like, absolutely changed my life. And the portal of having a book out there in the world that people are reading and reaching out to me based on, like, is a life-changing experience. And I was so grateful to Scribe. I had a great experience with them. I was partway through publishing the second book with them when I started hearing rumors that they were like having trouble seeking financing, going under or whatever. And I was like, no way. Like, there's no way. Like, I was just visiting their office. I know a bunch of people who work there. Like, this is not happening. And it turns out that Tucker and Zach had sold this company to somebody who had operated it very poorly and basically like hit bankruptcy like an absolute brick wall and left a bunch of people, like, it was a lot of collateral damage and it was a very tragic outcome. And I was just sitting there like, this thing can't die. Like, I love this company. I've evangelized it for years. It's facilitated this incredible life change for me. Like, and I think it's really important to the future of publishing. Like, it is the original, the biggest, and the best of these like professional publishers, which help people who aren't a good fit for traditional publishing for whatever reason, like, get their book published and out there. And I could go through the whole structure of the publishing industry if you're interested. It's a little bit of a TED talk from Eric, but so it might be a digression in this conversation. But basically, I think it's a really important. I think their business model is the future. I think they're a pioneer of it. And I worried about what would happen to the publishing industry as a whole if like the leader with that model went out of business for any reason, because nobody knows like the nuances of why that might have happened. They just be like, oh, that company failed. That model doesn't work. And that is very much not true. And I intend to spend the next few years proving it. But so I just started making phone calls, and luckily I, have found my way into this world where of, private equity and permanent equity. And I have friends who buy companies. So I made some calls, and some friends that own a firm called Enduring Ventures ended up buying the business. They bought it last summer, and I was just thrilled to hear that somebody with like a really truly long-term outlook and really good operating chops was going to buy this business, and I could continue to be a fan and publish my books with them. I was like, all right, great, job done. Like, good job, Eric. And then they called me a month later and were like, we need somebody to run this company, and we think it should be you. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, I've never been a CEO before, right? And they're like, yeah, we got it. We'll help. Don't worry. I was like, okay, I will count on that. And, it's not like I haven't been studying and working in business and working closely with CEOs for a long time. So I don't mean this to say like I hadn't been preparing for a role like this throughout my life. I grew up in an entrepreneurial, like, small business household, and it started small companies before. But it really caught me by surprise. And I had to spend some long nights, talking to my wife and thinking about it. But it came together, and it's been so fulfilling to get to help other authors sort of walk the path that was so transformative for me. And, we've published, more than 60 books in the last 6 months. We got another 150 in the pipeline. Like, it's a big operation. Like, we've got a lot going through, and I'm so excited to see where we can get. I think there's really fertile soil to grow a really incredible company. And I think books are beautiful and sacred, and it's so fun to get to play a role in, like, continuing to produce them.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I was running through the list of books that Scribe has published, and a bunch of books that I've read, like bestsellers. David Goggins published his books through Scribe.
Yep.
Who else? Robert Glazer, he wrote Elevate. I've read that. A few others like that. Have you? No, I don't know if you've worked with Paul on his book, Paul Millard's book, The Pathless Path. Have you guys kind of crossed paths?
Paul's a friend. I admire his path a lot. We're in a few group chats together, and we like trade self-publishing secrets. I love how he's attacking this.
It's like a wild self-publishing success story. Like, it's pretty crazy.
It's amazing. And I give him he's a great example that I use all the time of persistence, and of the value of owning your book. Like, that is the reason that a lot of authors choose Scribe, is because we give them 100%. Like, they get all of their royalties, they get all of their creative decisions, they own all their IP, they own all of their rights in perpetuity, right? Like, we are a professional services firm. We help them to the very best of our ability. We do very high-end work, but at the end of it, it's all yours. And Paul, like, shows the power of that model. Like, he did it all himself. Like, he was not a Scribe author, but he shows the value of continually reinvesting in that. And he built his book into an incredibly valuable asset. He's public with his numbers. I think he's shared, he does this series I love where he's like, it has now been 1 year since, I can't remember which publisher, one of the big publishing houses, the big traditional publishers. Like, it's been 1 year since they offered me $75,000 for lifetime royalties on my book. I have earned in that time $200,000. And I'm just so glad that somebody's beating that drum, because I see it all the time and I've experienced it firsthand. Like, this traditional publishing model might have made sense 100 years ago, but these authors coming in and working their ass off on their books and giving up 80-90% plus all their creative control to
creative control. That's big
in a world where there's not really a gatekeeper anymore. Like, it just doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah. And I mean, it didn't for Paul. I loved that book. Like, it was phenomenal. It has a life of its own. And to think that he was close, I don't know how close he was to actually giving up these rights, but like, he's close to, like, just, handicapping himself by kind of, and I think Balaji was quoting somebody else, but he's basically like any law that's like 50 years old, should be kind of re-examined. I think it was Larry Page or something.
Yeah.
And it's kind of the same with publishing. I mean, if something's been done for like 100 years, maybe it's time to sort of re-examine things. And, and like, I mean, you know more about this than I would, but it's not just book sales that you're sort of optimizing for. It's everything else that a book can provide for you. It's, one, it's your business card, much like a personal brand or like an online presence is today.
Yeah.
So like, it doesn't so much matter if you kind of sell only 1,000 copies. If those 1,000 copies are to, TV show producers that invite you onto your show, right? And then that's kind of like, it sort of cascades opportunities, right? And it's like, a traditionally published, book can give that to you as well, obviously. And of course there's the sort of vanity metrics, like counting books you've read, but like, but bestseller list, like, it doesn't necessarily mean anything. But yeah.
There's a lot of Well, there's a lot of the scribe authors that come in with stories very similar to the one that you mentioned. They're like, I don't care about the size of my audience. Like, I'm not going to ever sell, 10,000 copies. But if I just give away 1,000 copies of my book to the right 1,000 people, I'm going to bring in tens of millions of dollars of consulting services or speaking services or, like whatever. Usually, or at least very often, there is a business outcome that is not direct book sales. And the royalties are trivial to these entrepreneurs who are just sort of either trying to shape the story of their industry or their category. They're trying to establish credibility for a space or for their own expertise, or they're just trying to build trust at scale with really high value clients. And there's a number of those that we've helped facilitate. And, of course, it doesn't make sense for a traditional publisher to take a bet on somebody who's like, I don't care what, whether I sell 1,000 or 10,000 books. Like they're trying to sell as many books as humanly possible and get their biggest share of the royalties they possibly can. That's the game that they're all in. And I don't begrudge them a bit. And they're good at that game. But like, if you come in your Goggins and you're like, I know I'm going to crush, I'm going to spend my life selling this book, and I know I'm going to sell 1 million copies. I want all my own equity. Great. Come talk to a scribe. If you are like, I'm trying to grow a $10 million consulting business. I know that, spending $50,000 or $100,000 on a book is going to help me reach those goals within the next few years. And I don't care how many books I sell. I will just give the whole thing away. Great. Come subscribe. Like, we will help you do that in an incredibly high-end professional way. Like the overarching thing is like, no matter what you're trying to achieve in your life, a book can probably help you do it, but you need to retain the freedom to make the book that you want and to use it in the way that actually serves those goals. And if you have to buy, authors don't realize, like, if you sign a traditional publishing deal, you don't own that book. You have to buy copies of your own book at list price from your publisher. It's fucking nuts. Wild. So if you want to go give away 1,000 or 5,000 copies of your book, that gets pretty pricey if you don't own it. But if you can buy it from yourself at cost, sell it for your speaking gigs, give it away, like that's part of what's so cool about what Paul's doing. Like, every time I see him on Twitter, he's leaving stacks of signed books in airports. Like, what a gangster.
That. I love that. That's fantastic.
It's so fun.
Oh man. And I mean, there's power in the marketplace from having written the book on something, and it's like you establish yourself as, a thought leader, and it's like so much more than,
it's huge.
One of my business mentors, J.K. Molina, he was, he's big in like coaching and stuff like that. But he basically built this huge Twitter following of like 70,000 people, and he was making maybe like $10,000 a month or whatever, just in his business, which is super respectable. But then he met this guy with like 3,000 followers who's making like $30,000 a month, and it's like and like that's his tagline. Like Saint Cash is basically what he says, and it's like, sales aren't everything, And I don't know when my first book is coming out, but when it does, I'm going to come to Scribe and see if it's a good.
Please come talk to us, man. I think you are a great example, actually, of how much has changed in this world of publishing, right? Like, you're a creator, you've already established trust with your audience, you already know what they want to hear, you want to know, what they're going to want to read from you. You have a direct way to reach them. Why would you pay a gatekeeper price? And the whole context of publishing has changed, right? Like the technologies, almost all books are sold on Amazon. No gatekeeper there. We now have print on demand. So you don't actually have to put up a bunch of capital to print books. Most books that are sold print on demand. So no huge risk there. And third, you don't need some hookup with an editor's review in the New York Times to sell books. We all sell books to each other on social media. Your example, case number one, right? Like, you read things that are get recommended to you by friends on social media. Like, why are you paying a gatekeeper for any one of those? So I think creators are going to see this, opportunity sort of before anybody else. And I'd love to be in a position to help people own their full creative rights, their IP, and 100% of the upside of their hard work, where you can be the CEO of your own book and run it the way you want, and, earn every dollar that comes back your way.
And I like how Scribe just approaches everything. I mean, it's I was reading just the website FAQs and stuff like that, and it's professionalism all the way down, but it's this sort of informal professionalism that's like, it's like, I think in one of the FAQs, on the website, you're publishing's really weird. Okay. It's like, we'll help you. Don't worry. Yeah. And just like all these, you lay out their options like for authors, and it's just in really sort of common sense, plain language, like, here is how publishing works. We will, to the extent that you need it, we will hold your hand and help you do this. And you can, it's just like, and I like how it's like, who is this not for? Like, don't work with us if you're this, if you have sort of this or these expectations, right? And I think the laying out the expectations is really helpful too. You're like, if you think that it's just going to be like this super simple thing, and it's no effort, and you don't even have to have anything to say, just go somewhere else, right?
All credit to Tucker Max on that. I mean, he infused that business with his really great writing skills and personality, and just like straightforward, honest, like, here's the real deal. I respect him and the foundation that he's built a lot, and a lot of, I think we're going to see a lot of success with Scribe in the coming years, and we are all going to owe a lot to the foundation that got built there.
Yeah. Well, I don't think Tucker's known for like holding back what he really feels.
No, he's not. So,
oh man,
I gift and a curse.
Every one of his books, and man, it's just hilarious. When I want to take a break from like reading like just like meditations or like Seneca, or they like Ray Dalio's book. I read I hope they serve beer in hell, and I just laugh. Man, I find it super interesting though that he's like, he obviously always had this in him. Like he was obviously like wicked smart. Like you read the books and there's degeneracy, right? But it's you can tell that he's not dumb, like in any shape or form. Like, I mean, he was in law school when he was writing these books. I mean, you have to have something up there to get into law school, and to sort of take this big risk on himself, right? To be like kind of go full on into writing, give it everything. And I think his books are pretty special. And I mean, they're obviously hilarious. Not for everybody, of course. I mean, like, what book is for everybody? But yeah, it's.
I think that's cool. part of his genius is like a willingness to be extreme and build something really unique. And there's a Charlie Munger quote, like, good brands are a maximization and minimization of key variables. Like, it's got to be extreme enough to be remarkable, memorable, and an obvious decision for the right people for whom it's obvious. And like, there may be no more clear in the world of books than I Hope They Serve Beer in Hell and some of his others. I think they're they certainly stand out. Like a Cybertruck makes every other pickup truck look exactly identical. And in the same way, like, those extreme examples are just so obvious and so memorable. Like, I think it's a really good rule of thumb.
Now, what do you think is going to change in publishing? Not so much in the next 10 years. I mean, nothing's for sure, but like, I think I have a general sense of where publishing is headed more towards self-publishing and things that Scribe does. But what about like 50 or 100 years into the future? Like, how, like, books, do they still exist? Like, in what form? I guess there's always going to be people who refuse to give up their physical, books. I'm going to be one of them. Like, I'm always going to want to hold a book. But like, how else do you think publishing is going to change?
Yeah, I think books are extremely Lindy. Like, it's a fantastic technology. And it's a fantastic form factor. And I think for a number of reasons, like, physical books are probably not. I certainly don't think they're going to zero. They may be impacted to some extent by greater, smartphone or tablets as the population gets more and more of them. But at least me, I like looking at not a screen for some meaningful percentage of my day, and I find a slightly different retention when I work with a physical book. I think some interesting. I think the future of audiobook is very uncertain from like an economics, from like where the value accrues perspective. But I think the readers and listeners' experience in audiobooks is going to continue to get much, much better. We're still in the very early innings of that. I think that's a great thing. I think the generation of content, I think book writing is going to change a lot, perhaps with AI. And we're going to see a lot more people feel enabled to publish, and the volume of publishing that we're going to see is going to go up a lot. I think the transformation between mediums actually may be really impacted by AI.
What do you mean?
I think like going from a written book to an audiobook may be extremely cheap and easy. I think translations will get extremely cheap and easy. I've seen some early indications of that. I think text to image modeling through AI could get really good, and text to video, like, we're starting to see early indicators of that. So we may see, there may be like indie movies generated from books. Like it might just be really cheap to start to create alternatives based on books, or comics, like adaptations between mediums, I think are going to become cheaper and easier, I suppose, is the summary of that. From my worldview, books are often the headwaters of those other mediums, but that's not always true. Certainly many great like movies come from graphic novels or things like that. So I don't know. I think Mark Andreessen had a little. I think this was in his interview on How I Write, David Perell's podcast, which is a good one.
Yeah.
And I think he talked a little bit about like where are the hyper productive writers? Like where are the people who are like publishing a book a month? And I do think we'll see that. I think there are some people doing that already in like ebook romance, like fantasy, like super high output. But I think the technology will sort of expand the boundaries of like the more extreme patterns that we're seeing now. But the dominant thing I think in the industry will still be true in 50 years, which is, that it'll be power law outcomes. The very best 1% or 1/10% or 100% is going to continue to dominate. I think we're going to see, a much longer long tail, but a much fatter, like fat tail in that distribution. I'm excited to see, there'll be a lot of interesting things. The future is bright.
Man, I certainly think so. I'm glad you think so too. And, I mean, the evidence is there. Like maybe like 100 years ago, sure, like it's maybe stuff. Is this going to actually get better? But like, like what can you sort of point to that sort of? And of course you could back then, but even more so now. It's like you don't have to wait to sort of like to see the good. Like it already exists. Like you're just most people are just not looking for it. Which is crazy.
And I think the opportunity more and more people to contribute to that good are going to be there. Like I think, the democratization of access, I think it's going to be a meritocracy, and I think everyone's going to be welcome to participate. And I hope a lot of people feel that call to adventure to one of my favorite lines of all time, Lin-Manuel Miranda, create your own favorite thing. Like, don't complain about what doesn't exist. Just start working on it. And the tools of creation are only going to get more and more powerful. And no matter what your perceived weakness is, whether you're like, oh, I can write, but I'm not a good editor, or I can't draw, like the tools that are available to you to manifest your creativity or your outcomes, or share your gifts or your perspective with the world, I think are only going to keep getting more powerful. And that'll bring more people into this game. It'll create more creativity, a much broader sort of cornucopia of art and experiences, and I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, me too. I think it'll make curation more important too when you have so much more noise compared to signal. Like you're gonna have to find some way of wading through all of these sort of like AI written books. Just it's like the low effort kind of things that were banged out in like a couple hours, and to actually find like what's worth your time. So it's like you're gonna like. Yeah, it's just some way to sort of like swim through all of that.
Huge returns to curation and quality.
Yeah, it's. I think I see it being like more valuable for sure.
Yep.
So,
yeah, it's always been an important role.
Yeah. So we're gonna wrap this up. Pretty soon. It's been I don't know, an hour 15. I appreciate like all the time you've spent talking to me here. It's I could talk about the future till it gets here. Like this this stuff is like endlessly exciting to me, right? And and it's I don't know. There's okay, so I'll mention a couple other books, and or at least one, and a couple questions. You don't have to like go through like big long answers, but I do want to ask. There's a really good book by this guy who I happen to sort of disagree with on many points, but his book is excellent. It's called Bullshit Jobs by David Graeber. Have you read that one?
I haven't even heard of it. No.
It came out in 2010 or something. He's died since, like he's dead now. But it's about jobs that basically are created for no purpose almost. It's like he separates them into categories. So there's the jobs like somebody who hires an assistant just to make themselves look more important. But then the assistant doesn't do anything all day, but they're getting paid for it. And his sort of thesis is that there's something like psychologically damaging about having a job like that. Sort of like it's so, when in terms of like meaning and purpose, it's so defeating to have a job like that you're forced to go to sort of keep up appearances that doesn't need to exist. And he's like, he identifies all these like bullshit jobs and like things that that don't need to exist but do for one of these four reasons. And it's like Yeah, it's I don't agree with everything, but I guess where I'm going with this is like, say, 100 years in the future, however long it takes, like the future is amazing, there are no problems, like nothing to sort of work on or do. Does that sort of get boring? Like, is the future going to be boring? Like, I know, like when you get to the end of a video game, it's like you've done everything, like you've built up everything that you want to build up, and you sort of like, all right, I guess I'll go outside now. I'll do something else. Like, is there a chance of that happening in the future, or is there just like so many, billions of planets to discover that like that's not going to be a problem?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get bored.
Yeah.
I mean, the other thing is we're going to have new, if you live to 1,000 and you go through a dark age, you might get bored. But I think, we'll have new humans and new frontier. Like, part of the goal is to always have a new frontier and let people select how close they want to be to it. And hopefully more and more people want to be closer and closer to that frontier, whether that's intellectual or physical. But the amount of potential that there is in every direction is insane. It actually, like, I think about the concept of frontier a lot, and Balaji talks about it and has sort of helped encode it for me. And there's this amazing metric that helps me visualize it, which is that for the entire history of Google search engine, every single day, more or less 15% of searches are brand new, never been searched before. 1 in 8 things that have been searched have never been searched before in human history. How fucking crazy is that? And it's been true for 30 years. Like, that's nuts. And it's a incredible way to visualize and quantify actually like the frontier, the amount of things that are getting invented culturally or politically or technologically by humanity constantly, even though it's bigger. Like, arguably we have more stuff, more information, more inventions than we ever have been before, but that ratio is still the same. So like, let's just say 15% of our, surface area is frontier, and you can choose how close you want to be to it. But that as that expands, the total volume of frontier gets bigger. And so we need more and more and more people to be more and more well-educated to continue to move those frontiers further and further. Yeah. So I think there'll be, like, think how many more areas of scientific development and breakthroughs there are now than there may have been at one time 100 years ago. Maybe there were a few frontier fields or a few breakthroughs per year. Now you can spend all day reading papers about breakthroughs in every different direction and be so overwhelmed and so incredibly excited about all these different things that are coming. But it's because we have this edifice of billions of people supporting the tens or hundreds of millions that are actually at the frontier, pushing that frontier. And we need the core to get bigger and stronger in order to make the frontiers, support the expansion of the frontiers and the progress that they need to make. So that was a much more detailed answer than I'm sure you were looking for to the question of, will it be boring? Fuck no, it won't be boring. It'll be so exciting. There'll be so many cool things going on.
I'm leaning towards that myself. Like, I don't really get bored. Like, there's so much to do. Like, I don't remember like the last time I was bored. Like, there's nothing to do. It's like, I don't.
I've been bored since I was like 6 on a road trip. Like, when was the last time you actually remember feeling bored?
Exactly.
For better or worse, honestly, like those are creative moments sometimes. Sometimes I have to go create boredom for myself.
Yeah. Everything like what you're just describing reminds me of one of my favorite ideas from originally from biology, but I read it in a book called Where Good Ideas Come From by Stephen Johnson, and it's called The Adjacent Possible. And it's pretty much one of the most exciting ideas that I've come across ever in like my reading. And for anyone who doesn't know, the adjacent possible is like the way I describe it is like you're in a room with several doors, right? And you don't know what's on the other side of those doors, right? And so you just pick a door to go through, and you're in that other room. And then you get into that other room, and then you see that in that new room, there are like 6 more doors, right? And you had no idea that those extra rooms existed, right? When you're in that first room. And these are ideas. These are basically like, you don't know what you don't know. And as you just got to keep going through rooms. Like, we have no sort of idea of like how big this sort of building is, right?
Yes.
Which is pretty insane.
I love that as a visualization. It's a really good way to think of, or to explain actually the slightly abstract concept of like, you got to believe the next problem is solvable, right? Like it may be really easy to be like, well, yeah, why do we need more energy? Like, what are we going to do with it? We don't need to generate more energy. And it's like, well, more energy makes cheaper energy. Cheaper energy means we can put more into AI. AI might give us this breakthrough where we can actually like run a brute force computation to figure out superconductors, like room temperature superconductors, and then superconductors let us build space elevators, and space elevators let us detect the aliens. And like, you got to go through all those doors because each one of those is like unfathomable until you have done it. And it only makes sense looking backwards. But like, if we keep growing those frontiers, we keep opening new doors, we keep observing new adjacent possibilities. And in each one of those is incredibly exciting.
Mm-hmm. That leads me into one of three really quick questions, and then we're going to wrap this up.
Great.
And you can just rapid fire if you want, expand on whatever. But I guess this doesn't really need too much elaboration. Aliens or nah?
Yeah, fuck yeah.
Right? I mean, I happen to think so. Like, I don't think that like anyone like. I mean, I honestly don't know. Like, I've never seen one, basically, and like, I have no idea whether you know what I mean, or like anyone, if anyone else has. Like, I don't know, probably not. But you look at just like the expanse of planets and habitable planets, like the math is on the side of yeah.
I don't think we've experienced an alien encounter UFO style. Probably the odds of that feel low, but I do think there's very likely to be out there, like, which is very exciting.
I mean, I have seen some pretty weird looking people walking around, but I don't think
Men in Black. Men in Black was a documentary. Yeah.
Oh man. Okay. So second last question. So do you think? I mean, this was I formulated this question about Balaji, but I guess for both of you, would he ever get a Neuralink implant, and would you?
For all of my support of like pushing frontiers of technology, I am not actually that much of an early adopter, and it's that like personally, I'm not like a new shiny object guy as much as I am.
Well, you mentioned that about Mars, like you're not going to be the first on.
I'm not going to be the first on Mars, and I'm not going to be the first one with a Neuralink. No, I mean, I can certainly imagine getting one, right? Like the context is so important. You know, if there's a million people that have had them for more than 10 years and like experienced nothing but great things, and I'm 70, like, sure. Yeah. Fuck it. Let's do it. Why not? Like I have not put my deposit down on my Neuralink.
Fair enough.
And to be fair, actually, Elon explains like he's very methodical about like the risk reward and the experimentation that goes into that. And he says that the first thing that Neuralink is actually going to tackle from a roadmap perspective is like helping paraplegics walk or helping quadriplegics use digital interfaces, who are severely like bandwidth limited right now. And for those people, like the risk reward is so much like, like plug me in, let's do it. Let's give it a shot. So there's a lot of, I think there'll be a lot of consideration about that, and I think it'll be a really interesting thing to kind of see get rolled out.
Yeah, that's an important point too. It's interesting. Yeah, I have no plans to it, but at a certain point, like if everyone has it and they're sort of like have this major like cognitive advantage over anyone who doesn't have it, and you're trying to compete with those people, for anything, it's like you kind of have to do it. But then, like, do you want? I don't know.
Be a real good sci-fi premise.
Right. Oh, exactly. I mean, there's going to be.
Ramez Nam wrote a good series about that's very like Neuralink based. Actually, it's like near future. I think 30 or 40 years out, prevalent sort of like Neuralink technologies, and it reads like an action movie, but it's pretty fantastic. Sort of like given technology, what are the outcomes? Sci-fi. Nexus, I think is the first one.
Right on. I got that one down, and Good Energy, the book
nice.
You recommended before. I'm going to check both of those out. And last question. So when is the Elon Musk book coming out, do you think? Like,
way too soon for dates. Too soon for dates, but I'm chipping away.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. And he hasn't said that he's going to like help yet or like give a thumbs up on it.
No, but this one I'm going to just like do the whole thing and then try to get a thumbs up on. The last ones were roughly like every 3 years, so hopefully faster than that. But it's
I mean, he helped Ashley Vance write his, and he helped Isaacson write his. I mean, hey, I mean, there's like he does this before, like
he's been supportive of Tip at Y writing, and like I said, I'm not trying to scoop anything. I'm just trying to like take the best of him and scale it out to the rest of the world. And what's
or, like,
interesting,
trick him into something, like publish something that's going to be like a hit piece. Like, when did you stop beating your wife?
I'm not trying to ask for a special access. Like, I just want a thumbs up response emoji, and like we'll go from there. But yeah, the other important thing about books is that the translation edifice, like, you know, the Almanack of Naval is now translated to like 40 some languages, is like reaching all corners of the globe, and just like the pathway and the patterns that are there for people to distribute and share books is really incredible. And I'm glad that these ideas are reaching more corners of the globe. I hope for the same for Balaji and for Elon, and that, you know, these ideas, meeting the right people at the right time, can absolutely change their lives. I think, you know, if we collect the right people and make them optimistic and make them, inspire them to sort of work on engineering new technologies and doing it in a collaborative way, that like, it'll be a multiplier on all these, you know, it'll draw all these incredible possible futures a few days closer, and make them a little more likely. And that's what I hope to accomplish with my life here. Personal website is ejorgenson.com. If you want to learn more about scribemedia.com. I'm easy to get a hold of. I enjoyed the hell out of this conversation. It's super fun. This is exactly the kind of stuff I love to get excited about. So thank you so much for having me.